We happened upon a problem a couple of weeks ago. We were checking out the exhaust system for the boat, and our exhaust mixing elbow, which is in the top of our 4J-H57 motor, basically is sitting right at water level. Now that is potentially okay, but we had a discussion with Ian Mills from Power Equipment, who's our Myanmar distributor here in Australia, and he has done some rudimentary measurements, and it ended up being a requirement that we put an exhaust mixing elbow riser on our engine, and that will elevate our exhaust around about 20 centimeters. Now that's pretty important because in a marine motor where you've actually got water mixing with the exhaust and then the potential for siphon back of water from the engine and from the water lock muffler, you need to really circumvent that problem, and that means we need to elevate that exhaust riser up around about this high and almost above water level. I think it was around 30 centimeters above our water lock muffler. Now we had around about 15 centimeters, so we made the order, and yeah, 1,500 Australian dollars each. These exhaust risers are around about 1,000 US each for each motor, and because it's a Catamaran, guess what, we get to do it twice. But this is what's in the box. Our Myanmar exhaust riser is this guy, and you can see inside there, in fact, how this works, and I'm going to try to explain how I'm going to fit this. But you have the exhaust on the inside, and the salt water actually mixes through here into the chamber and then joins with the exhaust gases, and obviously helps to quieten it down and helps to control some of the pollution that's going through. I imagine that's what it does, but I know that it does actually help to reduce a lot of noise and keep those exhaust gases at a reasonable level of temperature, rather than having stinking hot exhaust going through your boat. But it'll go from here down into our NLP75 Vetus waterlock muffler, and then up to our Vetus gooseneck muffler. So there's double protection there. Firstly, we have a gooseneck muffler that goes up, that stops any seawater from entering back into the exhaust, and secondly, you want the exhaust waterlock muffler down below that NLP75, that barrel-shaped one, is going to reduce or eliminate any chance of that siphoning back up through and obviously into the engine, which is, you know, that's just a critical failure for your engine, and ultimately you'll ruin your motor. So that, plus the little bits and pieces, yep, 1,500 bucks. So what's in the box, I hear you ask? And as you can see, I must have got mid-batch, because I've got different coloured risers, and yeah, not really sure why that happened, but they're identical, obviously. So what is in the box for 1,500 bucks, or 1,000 odd US dollars? One exhaust riser, a small elbow, pipe elbow, water elbow, a gasket that'll join this to the manifold, a joint pipe, obviously for an extension there, and a blanking plug in each. So pretty nice equipment. I mean, I love getting this stuff because at least you know you're buying the bona fide stuff, but you know, by the same token, that is a lot of money. There's learning by doing. Now, I've never done one of these before, but it can't be that hard. You've just got to make sure that you do all the right things at the right time, and it can't be that difficult. So I've got the exhaust elbow here. We've obviously got the water coming out of the heat exchanger here and into the exhaust mixing elbow. Now I need to move this one and put my riser on. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is remove our water hose, and that's the only thing that's attached to the existing exhaust elbow. Remove that hose, and then I'm going to put the new one on and then put it all back together. But it's pretty simple, but you know, you just want to basically make sure you've got all of your parts in place. Obviously we've got the gasket there. We're going to replace the gasket. I've never used a gasket twice, so let's get into that. So I've got a few tools, and we'll just start to disassemble what we have here. So we've got obviously our hose clamp rubber end. I think I might actually take it off at the heat exchanger as well, and that way I can have a little bit more room to work. And what's amazing on this new motor is that nothing is over tightened. It's funny how when we tend to do our own retrofitting of things, we tend to over tighten everything. All of these things would have been put on in the factory and perfectly adequate for the purpose, and then we come in and add something else, and we just over tighten everything. So I'll get this one off the heat exchanger, and as you can see, that's come up pretty nicely. And then I'll be able to get this one off here, on here. Do love a little bit of mechanical work, thanks to my my dad making me rebuild engines. And I had a position where I used to service scuba regulators and breathing apparatus, positive pressure units for fire brigade and the like. And that taught me, more than anything, to always work slowly and methodically. So here we have our exhaust manifold, and obviously the heat exchanger up here, and the water runs straight into the exhaust manifold. This gasket here obviously is for the mixing elbow that I have here, so I'm going to replace that with our new one from Yen. Okay, so I'm going to show you what this does. The original one went like this, and the outlet was here, so down low, and it's about 10 or 15 centimeters down here to where the muffler starts. What we need to do is get it up to about here. So the original one was there, so here facing down. The new one is giving me some elevation, and it's pretty much right on the margin of where I would have liked it. I probably would have liked a little more, to be honest. Interestingly enough, the other one didn't have washers on it, but this one certainly does, and obviously to stop seizing and any other issues. So we now have a upgraded Yanmar motor with an exhaust riser, which will circumvent a lot of that propensity to siphon back into the motor, and we don't want that. Alright, so that's now fitted. Now I need to ascertain my water level, and I know that it is here, right on this chine here. Now that creates another problem with this, in that the water emitting from our heat exchanger technically should go up and back into the mixing elbow. Before I go fitting the water pipe onto this, because once it's on, it's going to be a bit difficult to remove, I want to go and do some reading and make sure that I do have to put an anti-siphon loop here as well. Now, so how that would look would be the water pipe would come out here, up to a vented loop up here on the outside hull of the boat, and then back down into here, into the mixing chamber, and then obviously our exhaust gases are going to come out. But I now have 30 centimeters of rise between the inlet of the waterlock muffler and my mixing elbow. So that was the whole goal of this exercise. Now I have these other parts here. I could either do that, and although I am just above the waterline, I think it's 15 centimeters as I'm looking for, and I'd be right on that if I was, if I was joking. I'd probably say, depending on the displacement of the vessel here, probably 10 centimeters above. But technically, to get it 15 centimeters up to here, I really would like to put in some sort of vented loop, and obviously bring it back into here, and that's going to solve all my problems with no chance of any siphoning back. Alright, so I'll go and fit this one. This is the nice silver one. I actually think I'm going to prefer my starboard motor, because that's pretty blingy. But I'll go and get that one fitted now, and then at least that's one of those big jobs ticked off the list to get this thing on the water. Jeff went home this morning. He had New Year's Day with us. We had a day off. God, mate, we were knackered yesterday. Went for a paddle down, had a swim at the beach. But he has tabbed all of our forward cabins, basically the margins between the modules and the floor and the wall. So they're all totally integrated. In fact, every single module except for my galley is now integrated. What I've actually done in here, I've basically gone and tabbed all of the inside in here, so including the ceiling. So really happy to have all that done, and that means all of these components are now monocoque. This whole boat basically is one piece. There's no apart from this wardrobe and the one on the other side, everything else is glassed in. There's nothing in this boat that isn't physically glued, glassed, or filleted, tabbed, and put in place. And apart from the doors, they're about the only things that are going to be loose in this boat and potential for squeaking and the like. So yeah, let's have a look. Well, that's great. And I've also gone down and tied in the cabinet wall here and the door. And I also went in here. So I've gone to town today and got pretty much everything tabbed in this back cabin. And Jeff did the other one as well. So the one on the other side the other day. Certainly nice to get some finishing glass work done so that I can come in and start fairing and potentially painting or flow coating, whatever I decide to do. Probably going to flow coat all the walls and then decide how to go ahead with putting in some linings, I guess.
A couple of episodes back, I began the helm station integration, laminating the insides of the custom module to the cabin wall and the stair module. The inside of this area is rarely going to be seen by anyone other than myself, so I have decided to flow coat it with a waxed gel coat rather than a 2-pack urethane paint to provide a clean and bright area to house our wiring and steering system within that cavity. It's a small cavity, and it actually turned out to be a little harder than I anticipated, as I had to position myself on top of the fridge cabinet, reach deep into the helm console, resulting in a massive flow coat in my ever-decreasing hair. A good way to remove resin out of your hair is with hair conditioner with a stiff comb, and it takes a long time and it does hurt.
So after literally hours of preparation, I went sanding down inside the helm, down in here, vacuuming it out, sanding all the edges and everything. I'm going to flow coat this entire section here with my mist grey flow coat. I've just masked it all off. I've got to be mindful of the fact that I still need to laminate that panel that's down on the floor down there into place when it goes in. So you don't want to put any flow coat right where you want to be tabbing. So that wall will be glued to this face here, and then I'll be tabbing this. Now how I'm going to do that is through the access holes that are going to be in here, in the top of this, and in the bottom underneath the television, and also in that end one. So I've got 4 points of access, at least 3 points of access in through into the back of the helm station. I've masked everywhere where I don't want flow coat to go. Hopefully I'm going to be able to contain it. Now I'm going to do the inside first, obviously. We don't want to be doing the outside first, but I figure if I get all this done, Zach's coming in, he's moved in with us today for 2 weeks, and he's just sorting out a few personal things. Him and Ellen are getting ready to move to New Zealand. But I've stolen his passport, as I mentioned earlier. He's not getting that back until the wiring is somewhat complete and we have an operating system. So the more I can do here, it means we can semi-install our instruments and everything and make sure that we have the conduiting and everything right. We can pull our engine looms up. We can get everything ready to go. I did not fair this down, and when you flow coat, the nice thing about that is I can now give it a good light sand with an orbital and it'll come up smooth enough for good. Look, this is behind our cabinet. It's not an area that's going to have hands and everything in there, but I'll make sure there's no nasty little dags. There's a couple little spots over here. That's the thing with flow coat, it's not self-leveling, so you end up with, you know, little bumps and nodules and little bits like this, and they become quite sharp. So it's up to me then. I just come through with some 60 grit sandpaper on a block and just sand them flat, and that is enough to make this all nice and clean and smooth and you know, light. So the nice thing is when you're actually looking inside your cabinets, you're not looking into a dark, resin coloured, flavoured colour like this. Is a horrible thing to look into when you're looking for nice lines. I'm going to have a lot of NMEA connectors and everything along this panel here, and I need to have good access to them. So you can actually mirror the multifunction display onto a television and certainly onto an iPad, which could potentially be sitting over there in a nav station. So there's a lot of good functionality that we can go with now that wasn't available up until a few years ago. And as you can see, all I've done really in the last few hours is sort of heightened or lightened the whole chamber in there, but I've left enough room here for tabbing to make sure that I can make this a structural part of the boat as well. So I've left that all the way down there, plenty of room to do some internal tabbing, and then I can just come in and do a final flow coat of those edges. Nice to get it done though, because once this whole thing's in place, I'm not going to be able to access down into there. Just not going to be possible. Basically that's just nice and clean. It's all done inside. It's looking pretty good down in there. It's a couple of drips, but who cares? As you can see, I didn't get any on my nice clean helm station. Looking pretty ugly down in there, but that's just part and parcel of it. I'm going to be doing some tidying up here tomorrow with a brush, and I can start to think about mounting the helm. Oh, it's good to see this toolbox here. Zach is back. We've got stuff everywhere again. It's the 5th of January, and here he is. Get back in your hole, son.
I know.
Well, you're not my son. We've got to clear that up.
Yes.
Zach is my daughter's boyfriend, not my son. So Zach's back.
I'm back.
And he's heat shrinking and he's doing all his stuff. He's making a mess. So we're hoping to wire up today. So iTech World in WA have done us a deal. It wasn't a bad deal. Was pretty happy to get those in. So we're going to basically get those back in the battery box once that flow coat goes off. I've just continued to finish off the flow coating of the sealed battery box compartment that we're making here to meet AMSA standards, which is a standard that they've adopted. I'm not really sure why, but anyway, we're going to vent that to the ceiling to make sure our box is sealed. So we're working on all of that while Zach's in there. Done a lot of work over here yesterday to get ready for pulling some wires up into the helm station, so we can pretty much wire all of that up, I think, now. And yeah, looks like Zach's here. His toolbox is here, and there's a lot of stuff everywhere. Zach just made a comment. He said, for the first time in this whole electric install, we now have to be careful because I'm playing with the batteries.
Yeah, up until now, it's essentially just been rope.
Yeah, it's just basically copper wire. We've got these big 4-aught terminals, and they're serious pieces of gear, and I'm going to just work out the cable lengths for the jump cables. And I'll do all the negatives, and then I'll take them out, and then I'll do all the positives. And we're going to measure, cut.
Yeah.
I'm not going there. Sorry, mate. I'm Explorer's life. We're going to jump on your bandwagon. Measure, cut, crimp, shrink, and install.
I feel like I need a t-shirt, honestly.
4-aught wire. I can't.
With a 5/16 lug.
With a 5/16 lug, yeah. Actually, it is a 5/16 lug. Indeed. Beautiful. Mate, I got this.
Pretty exciting, isn't it?
Very exciting, mate.
Getting the batteries hooked up.
Starting to get our cables lined up. So we're working here on the negatives to start with, and then I'm going to take them off, blank them, and then I'll do the positives. Zach wants to set a light going today. Let's have a light wired up.
We're gonna have one. We're gonna flick a switch and a light's gonna turn on.
A light. Yeah, that's exciting. To have one light. All right. So I've measured, I've cut, I've crimped, and then I'm going to heat shrink. Is that how it goes, Zach?
Story of my life.
The story of Zach's life. This is Zach's life.
Heat shrinking.
His life in New Zealand in 2 weeks is going to be a lot easier, mate. I promise.
Oh.
Mate,
First I got to do all this to the bus.
yeah, you got to do this all to his new RV that they've bought. They've got a Mazda Parkway bus that they're heading over to New Zealand to live in for 12 months. It better be a good electric system in it by the end of the year.
Yeah, well, it's not at the moment.
No, it's going to be redone. He's got a whole job ahead of him, but hopefully not as complex as this. Yeah, beautiful, nice and neat. And they're close-ended lugs too, which is really cool.
Yeah.
There's no chance of any corrosion getting into them. Beautiful. This 4/0 wire I think was 80 Australian dollars a metre, so about 50 US a metre. I guess I bought it on Amazon from the States. Could not even buy it here. Couldn't find anyone to supply it. And the Multi-Plus 2 requires a minimum 4/0 wire. So we could have gone 2 2/0s, but we opted to do the 4/0, didn't we? And that's been a really good move, but it is hard to cut. Yeah, that is beautiful, mate. Beautiful. This is pretty awesome. I feel like I'm actually doing something to do with the wiring today. Really good. Oh, did we put in a separate line for? We did, didn't we? For high water alarm.
Yeah.
I've got the little gauge and everything, the little alarm.
Yeah, right.
So I've got all that up there. Zach's had a busy morning in there tidying up.
Yeah.
And he's done really super well. Look at that.
And heat shrinking all day.
Yeah, that's looking magic. Everything's absolutely magic, and there's a lot of wires going on in there. And we've successfully wired up our first water pump. Woo! Got to get excited about that. So the water pump here, our freshwater pump for our main head on the port side is basically, I've just wired that up, and we're using these heat shrinkable crimp connectors. Only way to go. So I'm going to do the macerator pump now, and that's actually our evacuation pump, so that'll pump the water from the Blackwater tank out into the ocean. Okay, time for this to go in, mate.
I know, about time.
Trying to break our backs. You're going to see how close to tolerances this is. So you better let me lift it. Let me lift them in.
So we're going what, number one in this
So
way?
it goes in, and then you gotta put it in. And you gotta really put it in the middle and turn it.
Yeah, wow, it's what I mean. What if we go
Slide down this way a bit.
on an angle? Is that a thing?
Oh, I don't know about that. Oh, that works.
That worked.
Wow. Okay. Well, that
Alright,
was good. Yeah,
battery
cool.
number one.
Actually, that's the one we'll probably end up wiring up. We're going to wire up one
Yep.
to make it work. How are you going to get four in?
Yeah,
You thought that through?
I'm going to see if I can figure it out.
Right.
I know you've thought about this, but...
Yeah. They're only 24 kilos and he's struggling. Oh, that goes in perfectly now, doesn't it? Look at this, mate. What a compartment. Oh no, the last one's the problem, but it actually isn't a problem.
Oh, look at that.
No, you have to slide that
This
to
one.
the end. Yeah. I've given us about 5 millimeters of breathing space. Oh, look at that. How good's that? Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get some heavy duty closed cell foam and block the end.
Yeah.
And then I've got to work out how to strap them down. So cool. All right, well that's done. Now I've got to work out how to get our battery cable to the shunt.
Yeah.
Right, so I've just made our big long negative, and we've had to punch another hole because I've got to have this sealed box. I've actually got to put a hole in here. This is going to be a potential chafe point here where it's going through, but Zach's going to wire it into the shunt, and it's going to be a little bit of a bend to get that in.
Once that's in there and we have the battery system all finalised, I'm going to have to seal this hole up with something, either probably Sikaflex or silicone. Is that going to go in, do you think?
Yeah.
It's not going to?
We're going to need a bend of the end of this terminal.
Oh, we can do that too. Right, okay, well that's just highlighted an issue. We've got a bend that's basically like that, where it goes into the shunt. We'll probably, yeah, by putting in that.
There's no way I can pull that back like that.
Take the cover off and have a good look.
Off what?
You can't pull it in any further either.
No, that's where it goes, right there.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's right.
Oh, it's it on?
No, it goes in the end here, but...
We can bend, I'll bend the crimp rather than the terminal on the shunt. Alright, we thought we'd just do a voltage check on the batteries. These new batteries they are at. What do we got?
They're all at 13.3, which is pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty
That's
good. They've been sat for probably a year.
Yeah.
Well, we've had them for a couple of months. We've had them for 2 months.
And they probably don't do a full charge. They probably do a balanced charge before they leave the factory, so that they hold not at full voltage. So that's fine. Just making sure that one of them doesn't have a dropped cell or something. There's not one at 9 volts or something.
So I need to get I'll basically, while we're doing this, we're either going to hook up a little solar panel for outside. I've got a solar blanket we can run. And yep, cool. All right.
13.3 on the dot. So
Oh, they're brilliant.
that's good.
Cool.